In today's internet speed hype-fueled film industry, taking the opinions of a stuffy cinema snob into account before heading out to see the latest summer blockbuster seems like the last thing many people want to do. We live in an age where fans mount petitions over differences of opinion, and ticket pre-sales are at record highs. Paying attention to some schlup writing for a newspaper seems quaint at best. Why rely on someone else to form your opinion for you, right? Full disclosure, I'm a bit biased here as I consider myself a film critic of sorts. I'll certainly make my case as to what role I think film critics play in the movie ecosystem, but first, I think it's important to address some concerns people seem to have regarding critics in general. Before which, I want to posit the following notion. The current state of film criticism is not the problem. I'll explain why that's both bad and good in a bit. Scout's honor. Based on internet lurking, I've boiled down some key issues people seem to have with critics. Issue 1. Possible collusion. The prospect of critics or entire websites being in the pocket of studios to be used as marketing rather than honest information. Issue 2. What right do critics have to criticize? Shouldn't they be making movies instead of picking apart other people's work? If they can't make movies themselves, what right do they have to tear those apart who do? Issue number 3. A lot of critics just seem stuck up. They'll praise movies nobody cares about and dump on ones people seem really excited about. I find each of these points of inquiry to have grains of truth within their fundamental flaws, so I'll address each one in turn. Recently, claims of the site Rotten Tomatoes being paid off by studios in order to only show bad reviews of competitors' products have been leveled by fans of low-scoring movies. Frankly, I can't find much evidence at all for this, but I do find some things about aggregate ratings on both Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb to be a little sketchy, though perhaps not in the same way Suicide Squad fanboys are thinking. The way the critical percentage on Rotten Tomatoes is tabulated seems to be particularly mysterious, as every reviewer uses their own system of thumbs, stars, or numbers. Sometimes a review will read as rather harsh, but ends up counting as a positive addition to the score, and vice versa. Even gaining the ability to submit your own review as a professional critic, should you have those aspirations, is an obtuse and archaic process without much transparency or regard for the progress of technology and culture. In the case of Rotten Tomatoes, you'll notice that each aggregate score for a given movie has two parts: the reviewer score and the audience score, which anyone can contribute to. IMDb has a similar feature. Inversely, where my issue with Rotten Tomatoes' critical score hinges on the lack of transparency, my problem with the audience score is how open it is. As literally anyone can contribute, it can lead to a lot of internet trolling. For example, before the Ghostbusters reboot even hit theaters, it had already garnered thousands of negative ratings by trolls on IMDb, permanently swaying its score. Both of these issues underline what is, to me, a basic fact. An aggregate score for a film is too flawed to be counted on as an accurate measure of quality or enjoyability. It shouldn't be relied upon as a final word in any argument per se, but rather could be used as a general aid. Let's say you have a long list of movies hitting theater this month that you would love to see, but can only afford to see a couple. Taking a glance at an aggregate score could help you thin the herd a bit. Additionally, let's say you're pumped for a movie that ends up disappointing the majority of its audience or critics. A lower score may lower your expectations and result in you actually enjoying it more than you would have had you held it to the standard of its own hype. Looping back to the accusation that sites or critics are paid off, I must admit that's a possibility, theoretically. I find no real evidence of this being widespread, but I'll concede the slim hypothetical possibility of it happening on a small scale. That said, I would like to ask conspiracy theorists why they keep attacking Rotten Tomatoes for scoring Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad so low when Warner Brothers and Rotten Tomatoes are owned by the same parent company. If critics or sites could be paid off as suggested, you can bet those scores would be much, much higher in order to create more positive buzz and increase their ticket sales. Moving on. I find the notion of, if you don't like it, why don't you do it better? That's often leveled against critics to be very puzzling. Just because you can see a flaw or point of perfection doesn't mean you can or even should have the skill to recreate or fix it. I'm no chef, but I can tell the difference between a 5-star meal and fast food. By this logic, every English teacher would need to be an acclaimed author in order to have any validity in the classroom. Needless to say, I find this line of reasoning a bit silly. However, if you do find yourself subscribing to it, you'll be pleasantly surprised to discover the following. Out of the many film critics out there, professional and otherwise, there are quite a few who also make feature films, short films, music videos, etc. Does this make their opinions on movies more valid? If so, what if they totally disagree with your opinion? What happens to their validity then? Full disclosure, I work as a matte painter on feature films. You've probably seen some of them. Both my bachelor's and master's are in visual effects. Outside of work, I'm an amateur filmmaker. I've even managed to get some of my stuff into film festivals. If anyone should be embracing this only filmmakers should critique films nonsense, it would be me. But I think I've made my opinion clear on the matter. Every film critic's differing background and experiences make for a richer canvas of critique. There are so many varying lenses from which movies are dissected that it makes the entirety of criticism more illuminating, regardless as to whether I agree or disagree with a given review. Finally, are critics generally stuck up? Short answer, Yes, but there's a reason for that. Many professional reviewers critique from a standpoint of someone who watches a ton of movies. We're talking nearly every wide release, as well as hitting the festival circuit and seeing a lot of the smaller budget movies as well. A member of the general public sees, maybe 2 movies in theaters a month, optimistically? Due to this disparity in the volume of films watched, a critic may find a given release to be stale, riddled with stereotypes, and reusing entire characters and plot lines from much better movies, while a general theater goer may find the same movie wildly original, simply because they don't have much to compare it to. They would see the review slamming the movie that was so original to them, and yeah, from their point of view, the critic is just being snobby. So what do we do in this situation? What are critics useful for if there's such a gap in purpose and experience between the reviewer and the audience? To bring this line of reasoning home, I'll reiterate. The current state of film criticism is not the problem. Access to every single review of every single film simultaneously is the problem. Trying to listen to, weigh, or ignore a sea of positive or negative nitpicks, praise, hype, or condemnation all at once reduces the helpfulness of a singular review to simple background noise. My advice? Don't read or watch any more reviews. If a random stranger just walked up to you off the street and said, "Batman v Superman was better than I thought it would be," it wouldn't mean much to you. You don't know that person. If you have a good friend with whom you share a taste in movies or music and they said the same thing, now that might make you think about seeing it. Not because you're not forming your own opinion, but because you know if this friend had a good time and you have similar tastes, you might get something out of it as well. It's important to find reviewers who are on your wavelength. Every critic can't speak to every person. I recommend looking up reviews covering movies you adore and reviews for movies you can't stand. Find critics with similar tastes and follow their work. Now, how will this benefit you? How do you usually find out about what movies are coming up? Is it a trailer? Is it a poster? This kind of marketing saturation is not cheap. In fact, the cost is sometimes larger than the entire budget of the film. When a person sees a movie, it's usually because a considerable amount of money has been spent to entice them into doing so. With this in mind, who can speak for the films that are awesome but have no money to push marketing at you? A reviewer who shares your taste isn't forming your opinion, they're opening a door. Aside from helping you discover new movies, they can keep you from getting swept away in a tidal wave of hype every summer, and they can help you better articulate exactly why you love or hate certain movies. I'm not saying to shut out divergent opinions or to avoid being challenged, but I'm simply speaking to the benefits of fostering a stable of critics who you trust and can point you in the direction of what may become your next favorite movie. My personal trusted stable currently consists of Movie Bob, the Nostalgia Critic, Possessed by Horror, Cinefix, my buddy Patrick, and the Cinema Snob. But there are so many more out there with just different opinions and experiences. Film critics do not exist to form your opinion for you, but they can be a springboard to discovery. So get to it if you haven't already. Find reviewers who are your allies and discover a whole new world of cinema, entertainment, and inspiration. What about you? Who are your favorite or most trusted voices in film criticism? Do you generally look for reviews as a test of a movie's quality or for a recommendation? If you have any topic requests for future episodes, I'd love to hear them in the comments. This has been Cinema Cemetery, digging 6 feet deeper into film and culture.